Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex discussion. Today, I want to back things up and I want to discuss something that I think we might have to start paying closer attention to moving forward, which is now that we know for certain that Kashin Koji is alive and he's working with Boruto, where is Kashin Koji currently? Because as we saw in the last couple of manga chapters, Kashin Koji was nowhere to be seen, and even when Boruto made his second return to Konoha, we haven't seen Koji or even a sign of him being anywhere near the battlefield or the village itself. One possibility that I do think needs to be raised is the prospect that Kashin Koji is actually tying up loose ends for Boruto by taking Code off of the table. While it would be possible that Koji is actually laying in the cut somewhere in Konoha, hiding in the bushes, unable to have his chakra set off any alarms due to him being a Jiraiya clone, so technically his chakra signature is registered with the village and it would go undetected by the sensory unit, in the sense that they wouldn't be actively looking for him so much as monitoring the chakra coming in and out of the village, looking for any foreign chakra. And as we saw in Boruto Naruto Next Generation story previously, Koji does the same thing that ninja like Itachi and Sasuke and Karen Uzumaki have done in the past, which is they use the chakra suppression jutsu to keep their chakra signature from even being detected on the off chance there is a sensory ninja who finds it in their heart to dig a little deeper into the chakra that they're sensing. However, Koji going after Code, that is something that we can't take off of the table for a few reasons. In fact, I think we definitely need to discuss it. The first is that Boruto currently has his hands full in the lane of fire because he's got Mitsuki, bloodlust coming after him, coming after his head, and Boruto will have to slap Mitsuki around before finishing his conversation with Shikamaru and then leaving the village area itself. However, Koji isn't likely sitting around at the tree that Sasuke is trapped under, putting fertilizer at the base and trimming the branches growing off of Sasuke's body, or being the rocket raccoon to Sasuke's I am Groot. There was no reason to sit there and wait, because most likely Koji is carrying a marker that has Boruto's flying Raijin seal on it, or he has something on his body that directly contains Boruto's chakra, because as a reminder, the jutsu doesn't need a seal in order to be used to teleport to it. As long as the chakra of the user is connected in some way, they can teleport to others, or they can teleport other people, even if they haven't placed the jutsu sealing formula onto their bodies. Either Koji has a marker, or the toad that Koji has is in his possession has the marker, or it's that last example where conditions being met. We have a wild Code running out there unchecked, and on one hand, it's easy to say that Code has fulfilled his narrative obligation. He was the one who caused the shinjuu to evolve, and they're carrying the weight of the task that Ishiki gave to Code, but it's also worth noting that Code did run away, and it's not in character for Code to sit idly by and do nothing unless he's told to do so. While he did sit at Boro's hideout for weeks on end with Ada, that was only because Ada was the one calling the shots, and she was using her Senrigan to wait for the right moment to have Code go out to the lane of fire in order to retrieve Kawaki as a part of their initial agreement. The same thing with Code guarding the Ten Tails. He did it because Jigen told him to. Even if you take the whole feeding Boruto and Kawaki to the shinjuu off of the table, you still have the secondary issue of why Code wanted a chakra fruit in the first place. It started out as him carrying out Ishiki's will, and that's still a large part of it, but he also wanted to eat a chakra fruit to upgrade his genetics to Otsuki so he can stand before Ada and determine if he was actually in love with her because of her ability to control hearts, or if it was because he was actually in love with her. And if it was the former, Code planned on killing her and Daemon. That's still there, and it hasn't been addressed, and I do think that we will eventually step back in on whatever it is that Code is up to. But the Koji element, it makes things so much interesting when you think about it. We have no idea what Kashin Koji has been doing for the last 3 years, and he knows that Code has gotten his limits removed, so he knows that Code scales over Jigen now, but is weaker than Ishiki. And as Shikamaru stated, because they knew how Code's jutsu actually worked, they called Code a manageable problem since he wasn't as strong as Ishiki. While Koji, as we last saw him, was still stronger than his genetic parent Jiraiya, he wasn't anywhere near as strong as Jigen. And it's important to remember that because Koji literally tells us that Jigen being at 10% power was a once in a lifetime opportunity to kill Jigen. Not my words, those are literally his. He pretty much made it known that he couldn't beat Jigen if Jigen was at full power, and while he did do relatively decently against Ishiki, much of that can be chalked up to Ishiki's self-described bad habit of playing around with those who he fight, unless of course you want to do some super disingenuous scaling and say that Sage Mode Koji is relative to Ishiki, like some people will do disingenuously to say Sasuke blocking Ishiki's chakras with his sword scales Rinnegan Sasuke over adult 6-path Sage Mode Naruto, or Naruto kicking off Ishiki's chin guard means that Naruto in base is stronger than Baryon mode. I know, sounds pretty delusional, but people still say that. Now on paper, you don't think that Koji has leveled up that much, but this is a shonen and we have seen crazier power cliffs in the series. Even in this universe where the Boruto Kages were 19 years ago in the timeline during the 4th Ninja War, they are each at a level where you would consider them to be Kage level. But through almost 16 years worth of training, they got strong enough where they were able to gang up on Momoshiki and Kinshiki, albeit with the help of Sasuke. They were able to dish out some pretty significant damage to Momoshiki and Kinshiki. So the idea that someone like Koji, who is a genetic clone of Jiraiya and has cyborg upgrades like all the other KRYPTONIans, which is a reminder, we got told multiple times in the Boruto manga, all of the KRYPTONIans are scientifically modified by a model's nanotech, which we also learn in the cliff notes of Boruto's manga in the physical volumes is the same Hashirama cell technology that Konoha pioneered. It's just as what Katasuke told us, a model's technology is just light years ahead of anything Konoha's done. So Koji is both a clone and a cyborg. Koji could, in theory, grow stronger if he spent 3 years training, likely training Boruto for 2 years and growing stronger alongside training Boruto via all that sparring, but in no way do I see Code actually being taken down by someone like Koji in terms of raw power alone. It would have to be something else. However, more than once, we've been told that Code, for lack of better words, is an idiot, or as my late Uncle Jimmy used to say, that boy is like a 3-legged racehorse. He ain't good for nothing except for laughing at him. Whereas Koji, as we've seen, he's a pretty crafty fighter. While he did have some potential prep time and the benefit of fighting a weakened Jigen at only 10% of his power, Koji was still able to outsmart Jigen, who was being controlled by Ishiki via Ishiki physically being inside of Jigen, and that's no easy task, particularly to outsmart and kill Jigen. The idea that Koji, who would have had years seeing Code's fighting style up close and personal and seen his claw mark jutsu being used multiple times, the idea that Koji doesn't know an effective way to battle against Code, it isn't crazy. In fact, it makes it more likely than not, because before he went to kill Jigen, Koji specifically asked Amato about Code. Granted, that was Code who still had his limiters placed onto him, but Koji seemed confident, which means he already had a plan in place to actually combat Code. From a narrative perspective, this is the most important thing. Koji hunting down Code to engage him is something that could work for a few reasons. It gives the knee-jerk shock reaction of, oh my god, Kashin Koji's fighting Code, Boruto's manga is getting lit right now, and everybody goes crazy about it. Or it also pays off the priorities that these two would come to blows with each other inevitably. It also gives Koji a chance to play some mind games with Code to throw him off, because the one thing that we've seen with Code is that when it comes to Jigen, the guy who he idolized because he was on Otsutsuki vessel, and Ishiki, the guy who Code worshipped because he was Otsutsuki, the guy gets emotional super fast. And when people get emotional, particularly in battle, particularly in competition, they become easier to manipulate to fall into a trap. It's no different than you and I are on the playground, we're playing basketball, and I'm doing the trash talk getting inside of your head. I can psych you out your game doing that. Code has this list of people he's going to be going after for revenge, but noticeably absent was Koji, the guy who actually killed Jigen. Some of this can be attributed to the fact that Code likely doesn't know this because Ishiki never name dropped him, which that does come off like Ishiki basically presumed that Koji was either going to go off and die because of his injuries, or he would die after he confronted Amato. As Ishiki put it, the dog returning home to his master. The information would definitely throw Code off, and it makes it easier to hold an edge, assuming there wasn't some noticeable rage boost that comes as a result of this. The other thing that this does is that it offers the possibility of getting a proper evaluation of where Koji is now after 3 years have passed by. The way Boruto Naruto Next Generations ended made it pretty much clear that the benchmark for a lot of characters was always going to be getting to a Jigen level of power, because We ended off Boruto Naruto Next Generations with there being multiple characters who were above Jigen, similar to how we ended Naruto Part 1 with Orochimaru being viewed as his peak of power. He killed 2 Kage, but then we learned there are multiple other shinobi at his tier power and above his tier power, via the Akatsuki being revealed at the end of Naruto Volume 27, before you got the Kakashi flashback on how Kakashi got the Sharingan, and just before the time skip that happened in Naruto Volume 28, which is what you guys call Naruto Shippuden Episode 1. It doesn't really matter how much of a hard pill that is to swallow. That Jigen level is going to be floor for a lot of handful of characters outside of Boruto and Kawaki to reach, because that's going to be the case, particularly if they're going to play a significant role and help fight some of the threats that are looming that are Jigen plus level. No different than the series that Ikimoto borrows very heavily from when drawing the manga, which is Dragon Ball. Super Saiyan was viewed as this godly tier of power until literally the next arc shows us that more than one character had already reached that threshold of power, despite either not being a Super Saiyan in the form of Piccolo, or being a modified human like Cyborg 17 and 18, or having base power levels that went above Namek Saga Super Saiyan Goku, which is where every Super Saiyan at the end of the Cell Saga ended up in terms of power, which, reminder, English dub screwed it up. 17 and 18 are cyborgs, not androids. Power progressions, they happen, and they'll happen rapidly, and they'll happen out of nowhere in some cases, particularly for characters who we can already argue have a higher floor than the ceiling that some of the Boruto era Kage have. To be specific, I'm looking at Sarada and Mitsuki. They have a higher floor than those Boruto Kage had a ceiling. I do think we have to consider this a real possibility that Koji is going after Code either while Boruto is in Konoha or sometime later in the future, after being brought up to speed on the change in loyalties with Shikamaru offering them up some type of support from the shadows. However, this is where I turn it over to you guys and I ask, how do you think the story will potentially handle a Kashin Koji versus Code showdown? Is this going to happen, or will Code face someone else in the immediate future? In the meantime, click here to watch this Naruto Explain video.